Every day, financial institutions clustered around 1 square mile of London trade sums comparable to Germany's entire annual economy. Running through it is Threadneedle Street. The Bank of England is on it. The arrangement behind all of this dates back to 1066. William the Conqueror took England. He didn't take this, he made a deal with it instead. And that deal has never ended. Take a typical example. A teacher in Hackney takes home £2,400 a month. Her rent is £1,800. That leaves £600. She's 31, has a degree, has a stable job that every school in the country is desperate to fill. She cannot afford to live in the city where she works. She's been on the council housing waiting list for 4 years. A mile away, a flat in Mayfair sold last year for £13 million. The buyer is listed as a Swiss lawyer and a Liechtenstein trustee. Behind them, according to investigators, is a Czech billionaire. The flat sits empty. One street connects them both, and it's been doing so for 1,000 years. London has 2 mayors. There's the one everyone knows, transport, housing, the day-to-day. Then there's the Lord Mayor of the City of London. Different job, different rules. Been around longer than Parliament. He travels the world promoting British financial services. He meets heads of state. He hosts foreign dignitaries at banquets in the city on behalf of the king. Within the square mile itself, only the monarch outranks him. The office has existed since 1189. There have been 697 of them, and you've probably never heard of a single one. When William the Conqueror took England in 1066, he struck a deal with the city, a charter guaranteeing its rights in exchange for cooperation. 1,000 years later, that charter has never been cancelled. The City of London Corporation still has its own police force, ancient governing institutions, and legal traditions unlike anywhere else in Britain. There is no other place in Britain where that happens. And for most of its history, this arrangement has stayed well out of the headlines. A set of privileges that have survived every government, every war, and every reform parliament has ever attempted. Which, when you think about what it means, is quite an achievement. In foreign exchange, the buying and selling of currencies, London is the biggest market on earth. More dollars traded here every day than in New York. More euros than in Frankfurt. And the square mile is where it all starts. Only around 10,000 people actually live here. On a working day, 500,000 pour in. After the Second World War, Britain was broke. The empire was gone. American banks were taking over global finance, and the dollar was becoming the world's reserve currency. So Britain's financial establishment did something nobody had tried before. They created a market for dollars held outside the United States, outside many of the constraints of the American banking system, the euro-dollar market. London became its home in the late 1950s, and it grew fast. By the mid-1980s, there were more euro dollars in circulation outside the United States than actual dollars inside it. A financial system built in London had outgrown the one it was built to circumvent. Of course, other countries tried to compete, but they hadn't written the rules. The city had learned how to operate inside the gaps of the rules. In July 1963, US President Kennedy proposed a tax specifically designed to stop dollars flowing to London. They called it the Interest Equalization Tax. The idea was simple: make it expensive for American money to flow into foreign markets and it would stay at home. American banks didn't pull their money out of London. They opened London offices instead. By the time Kennedy proposed the tax, American banks had already started moving to London to escape their own government's regulations. Chase Manhattan's London branch could offer better rates on dollars than Chase Manhattan's own New York headquarters. Kennedy's tax not only didn't kill the euro-dollar market, it fed it. He was assassinated 4 months after proposing it, before it ever became law. The tax was introduced in the 1960s and lasted for more than a decade. London hadn't just survived the challenge, it had won, and that was just layer 1. Now, around the city sits a ring of territories: Jersey, Guernsey, the Isle of Man, the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Bermuda. They fly the British flag, use British legal frameworks, operate under the protection of the British Crown. But they're not part of the United Kingdom. They don't send members to Parliament, and UK law largely doesn't apply to them. What they sell to global money is simple: low taxes, layers of secrecy, and a legal system built for moving wealth without leaving a trail. Take the British Virgin Islands, population around 30,000 people, over 400,000 registered companies. Most of them have never employed anyone, never rented an office, never done a single thing. A registered address, a nominee director, a bank account somewhere else. Jersey alone holds an estimated £1.3 trillion in assets for non-residents, more than the entire GDP of Spain, in a place smaller than the London borough of Lambeth. The Cayman Islands host more hedge funds than any other jurisdiction on Earth. They are postboxes, very expensive, very secretive postboxes with British legal protection and a direct line to the City of London. Igor Komarov sits on Vladimir Putin's Security Council. In 2007, he bought a townhouse on Herbert Crescent in Belgravia, one of the most expensive streets in London, for more than $16.5 million. The buyer listed on the deed was Wasdom Holdings Limited, a company registered in the British Virgin Islands. When the UK sanctioned Komarov in 2022, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the property wasn't frozen. The official owner was still a BVI shell company. The beneficial owner was listed as a New Zealand trust, not Komarov. It took a global team of investigative journalists publishing the story before UK authorities finally froze it. Without them, it would still be sitting there, hidden behind a trust arrangement, 30 minutes from the square mile. Tax justice researchers estimate that around £388 billion is lost globally to tax abuse each year, and argue that a major share is enabled by the UK and its offshore network. To put that somewhere real, the entire NHS budget runs to around £180 billion a year, so the money lost offshore every year is more than double what Britain spends on its health service. A quarter of those losses flow through Britain and its territories. The city provided the lawyers, the accountants, and the financial products that make it work. It's been doing so for decades, without public debate, despite repeated criticism and limited political resistance. It doesn't explain the NHS crisis by itself, but it helps explain why governments keep saying there's never enough money. The city has an official called the Remembrancer. The office dates back to 1571. His job is to monitor Parliament and protect the city's interests as legislation moves through Westminster. No other financial district in Britain has anything quite like this. A centuries-old officer whose job is to watch Parliament from the inside and protect its interests. When tax law is being written, the city is in the room. When financial regulation comes up, the city's position is known before the bill is drafted. The office has been doing this since 1571. More than 4 centuries of making sure that whatever Parliament decides, the city's interests are heard first, before yours, before mine. You didn't elect him. You probably didn't know he existed until right now. The name itself tells you everything. The Remembrancer exists because in the 16th century, Cardinal Wolsey tried to tax the city. The city never forgot, and it created an office specifically to make sure it never happened again. Paul Double held the role from 2003 to 2023. During those 20 years, he didn't give a single interview to the media. His office has a budget of £5.3 million and employs 6 full-time lawyers whose only job is to read every piece of legislation before it passes and flag anything that might affect the city. In 2013, Green Party MP Caroline Lucas wrote to the Speaker of the House demanding Double be removed from the chamber. The Speaker said no. Double submitted evidence to parliamentary committees over 100 times. He never once appeared on television to explain what he does or why he does it. The world's oldest institutional lobbyist, sitting in the undergallery of the House of Commons in a building most people think belongs to the public. In 1986, Margaret Thatcher's government deregulated the city in a single sweeping reform. Fixed commissions scrapped, London's markets thrown open to foreign banks at scale. American banks flooded in, Japanese banks followed, and within a decade, London had gone from a gentlemanly old boys network to the most competitive financial marketplace on earth. The money that followed was extraordinary. Unfortunately, so were the consequences. Nearly 100,000 properties across England and Wales are owned by offshore companies, worth around £460 billion. In 44% of cases, the real owner is hidden, despite the law requiring disclosure. 1 in 10 properties in Westminster are registered to offshore companies. In Kensington and Chelsea, 1 in 14. Take Grafton Street in Mayfair. A mansion bought for £69 million, registered to a company that doesn't appear in any official record. A Mews in Kensington, £194 million, owned by an Abu Dhabi company listing another company as its beneficial owner, a company that turns out to be concealing its true owner. That flat in Mayfair, £13 million. The actual owner is a Czech lottery billionaire. The flat sits empty most of the year. And versions of this happen constantly across prime London property. The average house in London costs around £500,000. The average salary is £41,000. On that salary, a bank will lend you about £185,000. That gap keeps widening because the demand pushing prices up isn't coming from Londoners. It's coming from money that treats London property like a savings account. The teacher in Hackney is competing with money that will actually never live in the flat it buys. Every person on a housing waiting list in this city knows it. The market that they're trying to enter was never built for them. In 2025, the average full-time salary in the square mile crossed £100,000 for the first time. £103,352 according to ONS data. That same year, the average Londoner spent 40% of their take-home pay on rent. The teacher in Hackney spent 75% of hers. According to Shelter, 1 in 3 private renters across England, 2.6 million adults, spend at least half their household income on rent. There's even a name for what happened after 1986, the Wimbledon effect. London hosts one of the world's great financial tournaments, but like Wimbledon, British players rarely win it. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, the banks dominating the city are American. Deutsche Bank, UBS, BNP Paribas, the others are European. The profits go back to New York, Frankfurt, Zurich. Britain gets the jobs, the tax revenue, and the prestige of hosting, and ordinary Londoners get a city shaped around the needs of an industry that has no particular interest in whether the people who were born here can still afford to live here. So, how does one street in London control more money than most countries? Well, it made a deal in 1066 and never gave the rights back. It built a financial system governments struggled to control. It surrounded itself with island territories where money becomes extraordinarily difficult to trace. It placed its own representative inside Parliament through an office that's existed for more than 4 centuries. It deregulated itself in a single afternoon in 1986, and it helped turn the housing market of one of the most expensive cities in the world into a savings account for people who will never live there. The teacher in Hackney is still waiting. The Remembrancer is still in his seat. The deal is still in place. And the money is still moving. In foreign exchange alone, about $4.7 trillion through the UK every day.